On today's episode of Uncommon Sense, Lee and I look at some famously misattributed quotations that were not said by G.K. Chesterton. Well, hello, viewers and listeners. Welcome back to another episode of Uncommon Sense. I'm Joe Grabowski, the VP for Evangelization here at the Society of G.K. Chesterton. I'm joined by our Chief Operations Officer, Lee Sondano. Hi, Lee. Good morning, Joe. How are you? Very well, thank you. And we're going to have a little bit of fun today. We were talking about, fake GKC quotations, and I don't know where the idea came up for you. I know for me, we had an incident at the one of our summer conferences where I noticed that there was a near quotation kind of on a card that we had displayed at our merch table, and I mentioned that that's actually not something that Chesterton said, and then but it's something that happens. So viewers, listeners, it's not just you. It's easy even for those of us here at the Society of G.K. Chesterton sometimes to miss that there's a quotation floating around that wasn't actually GKC, but right. More approximately to this podcast, you came up with the idea. So maybe just give us a little bit of what was on your mind as you thought this one up.
Yeah, sure. So of course, like all good things, it started with a motorcycle. So I know a gentleman that's moving out of the state here up north and has a great classic bike that I was looking at. It's a 1974 Honda that he was looking at restoring that he never got to. And so we were kind of talking about me taking over the restoration and getting this thing up and running. And his sentiment over and over was, the motorcycles are just more meant to be ridden. They're not meant to be sitting in a garage. And it reminded me, Joe, when he was saying that, first of all, I was wondering if Chesterton ever had anything to say about, bikes or motorbikes and things like that. But it reminded me of a conversation that I was having with Dale Alquist, our president of the society here in the office a couple of days ago, of a completely fabricated quote. But it came to my mind while he was talking about the restoration of this motorcycle that we're going to get into. And it's, I'll just go ahead and read the quote if you don't mind here, Joe. But it's, just going to church doesn't make you a Christian any more than standing in your garage makes you a car. So that's, of course, one where Dale and I were talking about this, like I said, in the office, and he's like, nope, absolutely fake quote. Chesterton did not say that. But it's funny how these quotes kind of pop up in your head and they appear. So anyway, I mentioned this to you, and I thought, Joe, I think as a service for fellow Chestertonians out there, it would be really good to walk through some of these just completely fake quotes that are floating out there on the internet and kind of talk about them and talk about how they're fake and maybe how fake they are or how genuine they sound to Chesterton and to his voice. So this is going to be a fun one.
That's right. Well, so I came up with this kind of tier list system. So, people are familiar with certain streamers, web bloggers, vloggers online. You'll be familiar with this this system. It's an internet system. I don't know anything about the origins of it. Basically, you rank things kind of like we're used to from school, grading them A through F. A being top and then F being failure. But of course, we can't just leave things well enough alone in this internet age. So they came up with a new tier, which is S tier, which is superb or super. And it's above A. And so I thought it'd be kind of fun to take these quotations. We have a dozen quotes that we're going to look at. And in terms of their plausibility of being GKC, we're going to rank them. We're going to debate amongst ourselves, figure out if there's anything adjacent to these quotations that Chesterton might have said, which gives them a certain amount of plausibility, and then put them on our chart here. So for this first one, we have it right here. Just going to church doesn't make you a Christian any more than standing in your garage makes you a car. Right. So this one, from my perspective, this strikes me as, a little bit anachronistic, certainly. I mean, cars were around, but even, I don't even know that, personal garages for cars were much a thing. You might have like taxi garages and stuff, but
well, this is a very American thing, right? Having
yeah.
having a car in your garage, and so the first time I heard this, I thought that sounds like more of a very modern Chesterton and not an actual Chesterton.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think it's also, in a certain sense, a little mean spirited. And interestingly, this is so again, the reason we're doing this exercise isn't just to, look at these quotes, but we can learn things as we go through. It's famously said of Chesterton that before he converted to Catholicism, he was not a churchgoer. He rarely attended services when he was an Anglican. It wasn't until he came into the full communion of the Catholic Church and, began to appreciate the gravity of what was happening there and the actual, confection of the Eucharist that he became, an obliged regular attendee. But, I think that there's another quotation, not by Chesterton, but about Chesterton, which may or may not be accurate, may be spurious, another quotation, but that someone said of him that they hope he would make a good Catholic because he wasn't a very good Anglican.
Right. We've heard that
one.
Yeah.
So, that's something that we can learn about Chesterton, that certainly, at least before 1922, this would have been not only out of character for him, but even had he said it, again, allowing for the anachronism.
Yeah.
It would have also been hypocritical because he was not much of a churchgoer,
Right. And I think what's interesting about quotes like this, especially about the car and, standing in your garage makes you carb and all of that, is that I think we're, like I was, I'm so quick to think, oh, what would Chesterton say about that? What would Chesterton say about me standing in front of a motorcycle that needs to be restored that we're wanting to get out of the garage, right? And I think we're so quick to say, oh, let's look that up. And there's a lot of, again, like we said at the beginning, there's a lot of misquotations out there, but it would be great if Chesterton had something to say about everything, and maybe he does, Joe. Maybe he does in a certain sense, in a certain way. But I think this one's a little lower on this rating list for me. This is pretty easy to spot.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're going to put it down here somewhere D through F. I think.
I agree with that. Yeah, I'd give it a D, maybe because it's pretty likable, but.
Yeah, it has a cleverness to it.
It does have a cleverness to it, right?
There's a wittiness, so at least it's plausibly Chesterton in that sense.
Right.
All right.
So the second one, this is one that just came up as well for me last week. I was reading a blog post online, and this quote was quoted as Chesterton, and I remember even fact checking with some of my Chestertonian friends, saying, "Does this sound like Chesterton? Because this seems a little off. If I can put one touch of rosy sunset into the life of any man or woman, I shall feel that I have worked with God." Doesn't quite. You're already chuckling. It doesn't quite sound like Chesterton to me, and I think if I were to rewrite something like that, I think Chesterton would have something to say about that. You could even sit still through a sunset would be the miracle in and of itself, or something, right? So there's definitely something missing here, and it's way too sentimental. So your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I agree. Sentimental, a little bit, too
rosy.
Trite, and now, okay, what does it have going for it? It has that appreciation of nature, of natural beauty.
Yep.
It has sort of that painterly kind of mode of expression that Chesterton, that is familiar. One thing that strikes me right off the bat is just the use of I, right?
Mm-hmm.
Chesterton, and this is again a remarkable thing you can learn about Chesterton. The more familiar you get with Chesterton, this is way too much assertion of personality. That he just didn't talk about himself like this. He was too humble. He wouldn't have talked of his, if he was ever talking about God's role in his life or using him to lead others to Christ. It would have been in a much more kind of like circumspect and self-deprecating way. And so that was another thing that jumped out at me about this, is that it's a little too self-absorbed, as it were,
Yeah. Yeah, to me, and even reading this, it was a little jarring in the blog post. I'd rate this one pretty low.
Yeah, I
I
think
wasn't happy. I was not happy with this one.
if we have any Fs on our list, this is it for me.
This is probably it.
It does not strike me as even kind of in the ballpark of Chesterton. So,
right. And I think for listeners,
for
we're going to get to some other quotes that are much closer that we think or maybe hope Chesterton would have said. I don't even know if I would have hoped Chesterton would have said this quote. It's just a little off. Yeah,
it would have been. Yeah, that's a miss. Yeah, that's a miss.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, let's see. Where are we going for number 3 here? We have. This is a popular one. This pops up, rather frequently online. When man ceases to worship God, he does not worship nothing, but worships everything. Have you heard this one before?
I've heard that this was a Chesterton quote. This was absolutely Chesterton. Yeah, I mean, so every time I've read this one, it's this is GK, and I think most of the source material, if you were to type in this quote now, is saying this was a GK Chesterton quote. I'm not sure if there's any references to that, and maybe you can speak to that, Joe.
So there's not. We have different forms of this. The man who doesn't believe in God, he doesn't believe in nothing. He believes in anything, and we really have no idea kind of where these things came from. There is an essay on our website, so back in the day, and by the way, viewers and listeners, we should mention this at this point, that if you have any that you're interested in, by all means, send them to us. This is kind of a fun exercise all the time, hunting down quotations. So by all means, send it to podcast@chesterton.org if you have a recommendation. The essay on here notes that Aidan Mackey first brought this to the attention of the American Chesterton Society back in, or to Chesterton researchers back in 1992. And Geir Hosnes from Norway said he found an interview that Umberto Eco had given in a Norwegian magazine, saying that he had based an entire novel. Umberto Eco's novel Foucault's Pendulum was based on this epigram attributed to G.K. Chesterton that Chesterton never said. So the article notes that Bob Dylan, Michael Novak, other people have subsequently been attributed it, but it seems that this is actually a bit of a justifiable one, because it's actually there's a quotation from The Laughing Prophet, which is a biography of G.K. Chesterton by Emile Camère, or Camertz in 1937. And for longtime fans of the society, you'll know that we had a conference actually themed The Laughing Prophet a couple of years back. And we gave away a free ebook copy of Emile Camertz, The Laughing Prophet. And so if you read that free ebook, you would have noted that there's a quotation that comes up. The first effect of not believing in God is to believe in anything. And it comes up in sort of the middle of a quotation that Camertz is, he's talking about a Father Brown story, and he has it sandwiched. He has that little aphorism sandwiched between two quotations from G.K. Chesterton. So even if you're just reading quickly, you might misread where the quotation marks lie and misinterpret this as being part of the quotation from the Father Brown story. So this one, I think, needs to rank a little bit higher in our estimation, because it has a certain Chestertonian ring to it. And I think that it has a certain plausibility that he might have said it. And it certainly has, it has Chestertonian sentiment involved. Again, the essay on our website talks about some other quotations that are not quite like this, but
in a similar vein, right? I mean, we're talking about, as at its core, it's getting to something that Chesterton would have shared in, this thought, but it just wasn't said this way.
Right. So
Right.
one that I find compelling, John Peterson tracked down. He said in the Illustrated London News, there's a quotation. Um, there may have been a time when people found it easy to believe in anything, but we're finding it vastly easier to disbelieve anything. But then there's another one. The 19th century decided to have no religious authority. The 20th century seems disposed to have any religious authority. And that one, I think, really, strikes as being kind of in the same vein. So where do you want to put this one? Again, higher than what we've had, I think.
I think so too. I'm leaning toward a B, if not A, on this one. I mean, this is one that's easily misunderstood as being Chesterton. Let's throw it on B. That's
Yeah,
great.
I'll give it a B. Yeah. I think a B,
Yep.
especially knowing that there's some even more plausible ones coming up. But yeah,
Yep,
there we
agreed.
go.
Agreed.
All right.
All right. Well, let's move to number 4. The Catholic Church is like a thick steak, a glass of red wine, and a good cigar. Those out there in the soundbite world are probably cheering that quote as being absolutely Chestertonian, but indeed, Joe, unfortunately, it is not.
Yeah. Once again, I think there's an initial maybe plausibility, but I think that plausibility is based on a caricature of Chesterton rather than the character of Chesterton. And I think that he, frankly, would have viewed this as a bit irreverent and even profane, even in its sentiment, right? What he regarded the Catholic Church as was so transcendent and so beautiful. I don't know that he would have expressed kind of this thought. Now, I will say there's a certain plausibility to it being Belloc, right? I think Belloc, who frankly was much more comfortable in my reading anyway, with being a little bit irreverent and a little bit kind of naughty, I guess, for lack of a better word, right? I don't know how else to describe it, but Belloc kind of has a more almost medieval, jolly kind of sense of humor in the way that he approaches religion. Now, again, Chesterton says that the test of good religion is that you can joke about it, but this isn't expressed as a joke. This is expressed as sort of as a genuine insight.
I would mention for this one too. I loved your reference there for Belloc. I know when Chesterton is referring to kind of the stages of conversion that he went through for the Catholic Church, or becoming Catholic. One of those sentiments was not savoring the church like a thick steak, or a good cigar. It was fear and trembling. It was just almost just being overwhelmed by being part of the church that could, forgive your sins, and there was this absolute kind of almost there was an absolute willingness there, but an almost taken aback by the fact that it was, again, like you said, something that was to be reverenced more than anything. So this is hard for me too to read this in light of that, in light of kind of the fear and trembling that Chesterton has portrayed of coming into the church.
Yeah, he has a very high ecclesiology, and I just think again this would have been just out of bounds for him. And so once again, it's also based on a caricature of this kind of gluttony that really just was not part of Chesterton's character. Again, despite his weight, he was described by visitors to his house. They describe being surprised how little he seemed to eat. Probably, the issue was just sugar intake, that what he was eating more than how much he was eating. He wasn't gluttonous in that way, as well as probably some, glandular things going on.
Right.
And he was just a naturally big man. He was 6'4". So, I might honestly vote for this to be like an E.
I agree. And number 5 is pretty similar to this one too. I'd almost think that these two kind of belong right next to each other, and I'll let you dive into number 5 there. But yeah, I think E for this one. So E for the listeners here is right before F, which is kind of the lowest on the platform of quotes. This isn't a very good quote.
Yeah. Yeah. And so right on to number 5 then, because again, as you mentioned, it's sort of cut from the same cloth. Now, I'm going to argue a bit of a distinction with this one, but let's read the quote first. In Catholicism, the pint, the pipe, and the cross can all fit together. Now, I have to say, by the way, I know that we have friends even in the Chesterton community who use a version of one or the other or both of these quotes in certain kind of marketing. Like with the Chesterton Cigar Company out in Steubenville. And so I don't want to say that that there's not a validity to a point being made here. I just think, is it a point that Chesterton would have made and made in this way? I see this one as being a little bit distinct from the former one, because it's not using that strong metaphor language. It's not saying that the Catholic Church it's not predicating something about the church. Rather, it's saying that within Catholicism, you have these things that fit together. And here's where I would argue that this one has a certain plausibility that the other one doesn't, because this is an observation that Chesterton makes in other forms when he talks about how the church brings together seeming contraries. The church brings together feasting and fasting. The church brings together courage and meekness, right? Think of that play that he does with the virtues in Orthodoxy, where he talks about the opposites and how the church has a healthy hatred of pink, right?
Right.
And he also railed against Puritanism. He railed against
Yes, I was going to bring that up for this one. Yeah,
and against anti-smoking, which was also in vogue at his in his time. Any other thoughts on this one?
No, I agree with that. This is a little more believable in the vein of his take on, again, the Catholic Church and conversion, where he writes a lot about Puritans and Puritanism. So this is a much more believable quote, but still, probably the representation is there. The exact phrasing and words clearly is not something that we've ever found. It is not Chesterton.
Yeah, and again, maybe Belloc. We don't have access to quite the same electronic search resources with Belloc as we have with Chesterton. So, who knows? Maybe any viewers, listeners out there, if you have sort of an encyclopedic knowledge of Hilaire Belloc, and you've come across this or something very, very similar to this, let us know.
Sure.
For now, to rank it, I think so. We've decided it has a plausibility, kind of like the one about the car has. And yet I think because this one lacks the anachronism about the car one, this is sitting at like a C or a B for me compared to the other,
I think
cigar and wine.
I think you're right. Now that we've talked through it, I would agree with you. The sentiment is powerful in this one, and it does align with some of Chesterton's writings and what we understand of what he's trying to get at here, or what the fake Chesterton's trying to get out here. So I would rate it a C or a B as well. Looks like we got an open slot for C. Did you want to throw it in there?
Yeah, let's go with C.
Okay.
We will have duplicates, but that's
yep.
We're filling up.
Great. So number 6, boy, let's just read it. A man knocking on the door of a brothel is knocking for God.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure what that means, Joe. But this is a really interesting one. Now, you must have sourced this one. I've not run across this one before, but it sounds like something that would have been misquoted by Chesterton as well. So maybe talk us through this. But boy, that is a bizarre quote.
Yeah. So this one does also have a little bit of an effort dedicated to it on the website, and we do know the source of this one. There's a book called The World, the Flesh, and Father Smith by Bruce Marshall in 1945. And there the quotation appears, the young man who rings the bell at the brothel is unconsciously looking for God. So that puts a little more flesh on the bones of this quotation. This quotation, incidentally, has been otherwise attributed to our website says St. Francis, St. Augustine. I've also really frequently heard this misattributed to Fulton Sheen. And
wow.
No, in fact, none of those folks said it. Now, all right, let's look at it from a Chestertonian point of view. It's paradoxical. It has paradox going for it, and it is sort of, he observed about some vices, sort of that, like, the thief actually respects private property. It's the because he wants to just make your property his, but he respects the principle of private property compared to, like, the socialist who just wants to make all property nobody's, right? So Chesterton did have this kind of, this kind of thinking. I can't think of one where he would have, credited people. This seems more modern, let me put it that way, than Chesterton. It seems to have, this kind of idea of, the virtuous attitudes of modernity. Now, again, Chesterton talked about virtuous pagans and he was a great appreciator of, the Athenians worshiping at the altar of the unknown god. So this one's tough for me. I can see it both ways,
Yeah. The actual quote that you mentioned, is subconsciously knocking for God. I think maybe that's it. Is this is missing a little bit of something, where just that direct, brothel is knocking for God. The man at the door of the brothel is knocking for God is kind of an interesting. It takes you in kind of a different way than I think maybe was intended. So, like you said, a decently good quote. That's really funny that it's attributed to so many other folks. That's a really interesting one.
Saint Francis of Assisi is Augustine I can see, but Francis of Assisi, I have no idea where where people even get that idea. Fulton Sheen I could see too. He but Chesterton also, while he would shock with the paradox, he never leaned into the shock value. In that way. And I think that this maybe smacks a little bit more of, again, that kind of using paradox as a cheap ploy to arrest the attention. So, I really
like that. Yeah. I like how you put that.
Yeah. I can't fault it too much. I'm sort of in the D range for this one for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about, but I do think what you're mentioning about shock value of all the quotes we visited so far, there is a certain, wow, that's intense that we've not really seen before. So I agree. Let's put that kind of lower on the list, in the D neck of the woods there.
All right.
Great.
All right. Next.
All right, let's move on to number 7. Viewers and listeners, clearly not Chesterton. When it rains on your parade, look up rather than down. Without the rain, there would be no rainbow. Where was this attributed to Chesterton is what I want to know. They should be getting an email from the society to let them know this is absolutely not true.
This is like one of the top ranked quotes on the website Brainy Quote. When you search for G.K. Chesterton quotes, this is one of the top, most liked quotations attributed to G.K. Chesterton on that website. I got to be honest, I have no idea even where this remotely could have been sourced from. I didn't even bother researching it because it's so laughably just not Chesterton. And let's put a little force behind that analysis, lest some of our viewers and listeners might think, oh, why not? Why this? It's just, I don't know. It's too saccharine. It has this kind of chicken soup for the soul, inspiring cat calendar.
Way too on the nose for me. Right. Yeah. I mean, the explanation is right there in the quote, and that is not, that's not a very Chestertonian thing. We just had this discussion a couple of days ago, Joe, where I think the richness of Chesterton is having to reread things a few times, or even have that particular quote surrounded by all of the other paragraphs of writing that Chesterton is giving you to really understand what he's getting at. So to have something that just smacks you on the nose like this one is really tough to believe that Chesterton would have said something like that.
Yeah, agreed. Well, I think I know where we're going with this, but do you have a formal vote?
Well, I think this is at the bottom of the list for me. Absolutely an F. This is not even close to what Chesterton would have said.
Yeah, agreed. All right.
Yep.
All right, next. Let's see.
Yeah, go ahead. Go for number 8 here.
I've searched all the parks in all the cities and found no statues of committees.
So I actually like this quote.
It's a great quote. Yeah.
It is a great quote. Not Chesterton, but a great quote. So the first thing that I kind of key in on here is we're not translating Chesterton from another language to English. This thing rhymes, right? So right off the bat, it's like, well, I don't know if that's super familiar to some of the Chesterton quotes that are being pulled out of some of his writings. So just the rhyming aspect of this, Joe, is what really throws me off. I love the quote, but it's the rhyming.
Yeah, and I honestly, again, this one I didn't research down. This was also found on that Brainy Quote site. And I didn't kind of like try to run this one to ground, but the fact that it does rhyme, I could easily see this being, from a Cole Porter or maybe even Gilbert and Sullivan. Well, it's a little too I don't know. It doesn't ring true of Gilbert and Sullivan to me, but maybe, something in sort of the age of the musical, that this could be from musical theater or
someone is definitely singing this quote.
It's it has that not just the rhyming factor, but the cadence of the syllables. It has that sort of very sing-songy quality. I've searched all the parks in all the cities and found no statues of committees. Which again, I think argues against it being Chesterton. Now, is it Chestertonian sentiment? Could we say? I think so, to a certain extent. I think Chesterton, would have. He didn't like bureaucracies. He didn't like oligarchies. He appreciated great men, and he loved the mob. He loved the demos, the democratic lower order. So I think that on that, in that sense, maybe, but that's about it. That's all that I can find of similarity to redeem this.
No, agreed. It's a great sentiment. It's a great quote. I even kind of like the fact that this is a fake GKC quote. So maybe this is kind of a middle of the road one. I don't know what you're thinking. Maybe a C type of thing, but yeah, this is a good one.
I would say maybe a D for me, because again, I don't think it has the plausibility that the pipe, the pint, and the cross does, but I think that it's kind of like the car one, Yep. Agreed. All right. All right. Getting towards the final group here.
Yep. Great. So number 9, boy, this one's interesting too. A woman uses her intelligence to find reasons to support her intuition. I almost feel like Chesterton would have maybe even said that almost in the reverse. I don't know. I mean, there's something there, but it isn't. The phrasing of this is just off for me, and I would I've never seen Chesterton directly, in direct contact to a woman and her intelligence like this. Maybe you've got some more insight on this one, Joe, but I think this is maybe one of the first times I've seen something like that. So to me, it just, it's blaringly fake.
Yeah. I mean, Chesterton, famously, he talks about, I would say where he gets most topical about this is in What's Wrong with the World. And where he talks about the mistake about women. And he does sort of put a lot of weight into women's natural genius, native genius compared to the masculine genius. But I don't think that he really pinpoints intuition as what it is. It's rather that woman has to be capacious. She has to, he says, she becomes a jack of all trades, kind of a master of none. Whereas it is the duty of man to go out into the world and work. Now, again, this is Chesterton's view. We're not prescribing anything for the modern day necessarily, but that, she can master all her second bests, he calls it. She gets to be sort of, that chief hobbyist and not in a belittling sense at all. He calls it a very high vocation, that she has to do all these things. She has to be everything to her children, and what a wonderful thing that is.
Right.
So yeah, this is I don't know. This is like George Burns or Groucho Marx sounding to me. Although, again, we do have research on this one. So you and I are up against a pretty formidable source here, because this was attributed to G.K. Chesterton by quite an authority. It was in an episode of the TV show Northern Exposure. So,
well, in that case, Joe, I don't know why we're even thinking this would be.
How can we dispute it, right? S tier, right? No. Yeah, so that's where this originates, and we actually have identified again the actual source for this. It's the playwright Jacques Duval, French playwright. So we don't have an exact citation, but we know that it was Duval and not Chesterton. But again, Northern Exposure didn't do their proper script writing research when they attributed this to G.K. Chesterton.
Yeah, for anyone looking to reboot Northern Exposure, make sure you please consult with the Society of Gilbert Keith Chesterton before attributing another quote.
Yeah, and I will say this, in as much as this is sort of maybe a little bit deprecating towards women, I don't know quite how to read it, but if it does read that way, it's also out of character for Chesterton, because where Chesterton chose to be deprecating was always towards the man.
Yep,
when he was talking about the relations of the sexes. So yeah, for me, this one's
Great
I think
point.
an E.
I think so. It's a bit too snarky for me for a Chesterton quote.
All right.
Great. Now, so the next few are getting into really strong contenders here. These are really good ones. You want to go for number 10 there?
Yeah. So tolerance is the virtue of a man without convictions.
Great quote. It really is. It's a good quote. But you're telling me that's not Chesterton.
It's
so
not.
Who is it?
Yeah. Well, that I don't know. So again, we do have kind of an essay on this one, where different forms, another version, tolerance is the attitude of those who do not believe in anything. And apparently that's from Christopher Lash. And Christopher Lash is quoting Niebuhr, who said that this was Chesterton, I suppose. So it's kind of a multi-layered, and that's in Lash's book, The True and Only Heaven, Progress and Its Critics. So, I think that there's a bit of a plausibility to this one, right? Because I think that Chesterton would have been more careful to distinguish between what he would maybe call mere tolerance, and sort of the culture of tolerance or political correctness. I think that this is just a little bit too surface.
Sure.
That's what keys me off, that, it's not quite, Chesterton. So, Chesterton deplored, according to this essay that we have, he deplores impartiality. He says, he clearly is on the side of those, who would say that you have to choose a side. Simply remaining impartial, is problematic. Toleration of evil is complicit in evil. He would have been alongside all those sentiments.
Right. So it's in the vein of Chesterton. This is a very believable quote. This is a tough one. If I were to read this and it were attributed to G.K. Chesterton, it would have been easier to pass off as true.
Yeah, and he has two quotations that I think are most similar to this about bigotry, both from heretics. He says, in real life, people who are most bigoted are the people who have no convictions at all. Bigotry may be roughly defined as the anger of men who have no opinions. So now he calls that bigotry rather than tolerance, which is sort of ironic, right? That's sort of the opposite. And I think that there again, too, if Chesterton's going to approach something, he's going to approach it a little bit paradoxically.
Right.
But plausible. plausible for me. So I would kind of put this one in a C or a D area as well.
I'm thinking C. I mean, this is a pretty strong contender.
Yeah. All right.
So for this next quote, I had a little bit of a fit the other day when you told me that this was actually not a Chesterton quote, because it's one of my favorites, and I think a lot of people have heard it. There's it's kind of the epigraph of a really famous children's book. Fairy tales are more than true, not because they tell us dragons exist, but because they tell us dragons can be beaten. So again, it's worth noting for those of you that are Coraline fans out there. This is a quote directly attributed to G.K. Chesterton at the beginning of that book by Neil Gaiman, and it's a great quote, Joe. This is a great quote, and I think what's great about it is because at its heart there is a beating Chesterton, but this is not what Chesterton said. So maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit, but this was a really interesting discussion you and I had the other day.
Yeah, so I mean, this one I think is the best job of any that we've seen of paraphrasing G.K. Chesterton, of capturing a sentiment that Chesterton absolutely it's 100% Chestertonian. This notion. So I'm this one I think we're now finally getting towards the top of the list. And we've been able to kind of, we don't know what Gaiman was sourcing from, and we don't know what, whether he was the originator of this or whether or not he pulled it from another source, but this one is out there. It's all over the place. And, the source that we've been able to identify as the most plausible is in The Red Angel, which is an essay in Tremendous Trifles.
Right.
And in Tremendous Trifles, Chesterton writes, fairy tales, then, are not responsible for producing in children fear or any of the shapes of fear. Fairy tales do not give the child the idea of the evil or the ugly. That is in the child already, because it is in the world already. Fairy tales do not give the child his first idea of bogey. What fairy tales give the child is his first clear idea of the possible defeat of bogey. The baby has known the dragon intimately ever since he had an imagination. What the fairy tale provides for him is a St. George to kill the dragon. So, as far as paraphrases go, and given that quotation is in its way maybe a little too wordy to be
a little lengthy,
ideally pithy, and you have to kind of know a little bit of background info on first of all what bogey is, but also what who St. George is and what the story of St. George and the Dragon is.
Right.
I would say this is a remarkable attempt at paraphrase. This is an A or maybe even an S tier for me.
I completely agree. I mean, this really does get to the heart, I think, of what Chesterton was saying in that original source material that we were able to find. But the way that it's said, it's still you've still got, there's some paradox in there. You've still got kind of that Chestertonian feel. This is a really good quote. I would be tempted to throw this at the top of the list because, again, this is one of my favorite quotes, and I felt slightly scandalized the other day when you told me it wasn't actually G.K. Chesterton's words. But I think that's a good reminder too that if people are finding quotes out there that may seem not entirely like Chesterton, that maybe they're close, maybe the sentiment is there, but maybe they've there's been a liberty taken there for some maybe shortening or summarizing of what Chesterton was trying to say. So again, like you said, great example of paraphrasing.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and drop this on the S tier.
Yep.
So they're not all bad. That's good.
They're not all bad. Yep.
All right.
And I think for more for that too is that it's a great one because it doesn't go against what Chesterton is saying. So as we're rating these, it really is, we can't even imagine Chesterton would say that. This goes against some of his other writings, but this one is kind of hits the nail on the head with a really good quote. All right, last one here.
Yes. So this one is the one that appeared on the quote card on the book table that I that I noticed, and and had to point out was not authentically Chesterton. But do not be so open-minded that your brain falls out, or that your brains fall out. Any thoughts on this one?
Well, I after you pointed it out, it did seem, I guess, a little gory compared to what we're used to with Chesterton, and so I think just for your for you just pointing to it, saying that's not a Chesterton quote, it was like, oh, of course it's not. He would never say something about people's brains falling out. So it was easy to spot once it was identified. And I mean, so clearly now looking back at it, it's that one's hard to wrap my brains around. But there are some. Well, you're going to talk about that a little bit, I think, Joe. This does get to the heart of something again. So, like our last quote on fairy tales, the sentiment is there, but in a very again on the nose way that I don't think Chesterton would have used.
Yeah, and as I said, I haven't researched this one. I have this sort of vague recollection. I should have spent more time researching. I know the sentiment that this one arises from, which is why it gets attributed to Chesterton. So I didn't bother going down the rabbit hole and searching otherwise, and I should have, because I do seem to have a vague recollection that maybe C.S. Lewis actually said this. So this might actually be just two thinkers, or maybe Lewis was influenced by the original Chesterton quote and then kind of paraphrased it in his own way, and presented it as his thought. But I don't know. I have to research that one. What I do know is that in Chesterton there's a piece called "The Extraordinary Cabman." And The Extraordinary Cabman, it was in the Daily News, 1904. I think it was then collected in one of his books. I can't remember which. One of the essay books, might be All Things Considered or Alarms and Discursions. I'm not sure. And again, I should have researched this, but it was just, I know where this one comes from. And it's when, he's having his conversation with a friend, and the friend says that he opened his intellect as the sun opens the fans of a palm tree, opening for opening's sake, opening infinitely forever. I said that I opened my intellect as I opened my mouth in order to shut it again on something solid. And you'll hear that quote, that genuine Chesterton quote, sometimes said, I open my mind as I open my mouth to shut it again upon something solid.
Something solid, yeah.
It's there. It's a critique of open-mindedness as sort of this ateleological supposed virtue, which is, an oxymoron. You can't have virtue without teleology, but that's what Chesterton is critiquing there. But I think that it's too far away from the form for me to give this an S or an A. So I'm kind of in a B and C territory with this one.
Oh, I agree. Like we've said, once you pointed it out, it was pretty clearly not Chesterton. And what I like about that, I guess, original phrasing of some of that paragraph that you were reading about closing your mind on something solid, that's really what's missing in this quote. It's really even as open-ended as the quote is open-ended. Do not be so open-minded that your brains fall out, or what, right? I mean, we're kind of missing kind of that flavor of something, right? That's missing at the end of this quote. So it feels a little incomplete to me as well, especially after reading some of the source material. And I think Chesterton just puts it way better.
Yep. So I think it's C. How about you?
Yeah.
All right.
Great.
All right. Well, that was fun, and we'll make sure that you'll see this tier list as we constructed it. If you're just listening to the podcast, this is one of the benefits that you get if you subscribe to us on YouTube. You would have been able to watch us putting these quotations onto our chart and tiering them, and so. This was fun. This was a fun exercise.
This was fun.
Yep. How how reading Chesterton, even, Chesterton, it's quite a testament to him that even fake quotes from Chesterton can provoke good conversation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's good just really, I think what we were trying to get at with this podcast is to help educate people on the fake quotes that are out there and really give them the source material so that they can look back at what Chesterton actually said. And for that, Joe, what are some of the resources that people can look to? Where can people go if they have questions about certain quotes or want to find out more about the writings of Chesterton? I know that we talked a little bit about, if you have a question, go ahead and submit that to our email. I think it was podcast@chesterton.org. But where else can folks go if they're looking for more information on whether or not a quote may be real or fake?
Well, by all means, email us at podcast@chesterton.org, podcast@chesterton.org. I take this seriously because, this is our job. This is our job to provide people information about Chesterton. I did once get an email from a gentleman trying to hunt down kind of a spurious version of a quote. And, he was pleasantly, but surprised. He said he didn't think that the time and effort that went into it would go into it when I sent him sort of a multi-page essay tracking down all the source material that it could have come from and whatnot. So I enjoy doing this kind of thing. I enjoy running these things to ground. And, Dale knows a lot of them off the top of his head because he's been doing this for so long. So by all means, write to us there. You can also just search at the library, the Chesterton Digital Library. That's library.chesterton.org. You can search, wrap a phrase in quotation marks. If you want to try to pinpoint an exact part of the phrase, if you're not coming up with results, that will give you an indication. That's the vast majority of Chesterton's printed works are available there in the database. They might not be in public domain, so the full source will be hidden, but they'll still show up in the search results. So you should get an idea of what's genuine or what's not there. And then, of course, just browse around our website and look for those posts on quotations that we've already run to ground.
Right.
So those are some resources that we have for you. But, I think that this is quite an illuminating thing to get interested in when you hear something, to try to run it to ground, because sometimes in learning, like that, I think the most interesting one that we really covered today was that one about the pipe, and the cross fitting together in Catholicism, because you learn more about Chesterton when you have to test, based on what you know about Chesterton and the way he probably would have said something, and you get to compare these things. You actually become more acquainted with Chesterton through that exercise. So it's of value, double checking these things.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and that's, again, I think that's what's great about having you and the society around and us as a society with our website and some of these resources, is that we can really make sure that we're educating folks the right way, and that we're making sure to identify these fakes. This was a great myth-busting episode. Maybe we'll have some more in the future as well on some of Chesterton's writings that's presumably Chesterton's writings, but not. But really fun, Joe. Thanks for all of the time you put into this and some of the research as well. Thanks for breaking my heart about some of these quotes that aren't Chesterton's.
Yep.
But you know what? It's okay. We'll find more. But appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.